I believe that there are people at Turning Point who are engaged in covering up what happened on that day.
But were
I
any
have
of them
named.
engaged in the planning of the murder of Charlie Kirk?
I wouldn't know how it was planned. Absolutely, I can't make that. I cannot confidently
Mm,
make that statement. I can say confidently
mm.
that I know they're engaged in the cover up.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. We're going to actually give you an update today on the conspiracy theories of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And we're going to do that through Candace Owens' eyes. And we all know how she is when it comes to conspiracy theories. So we'll just jump right into it. She recently was in Piers Morgan's show, and she absolutely torched the so-called official story of the Charlie Kirk assassination. She said flat out there's no compelling evidence for what the public has been told and seen so far. uh, you know, Truly, this isn't just a debate. This is Candace Owens versus the narrative. Piers Morgan's pressing for receipts, Turning Point USA under suspicion, and the government story completely being thrown apart in real time. We're talking no videos, no ballistic clarity, no clean suspect, and a growing list of convenient silences. And by the end of this, one thing will become obviously true and obviously apparent. The official story is standing on vibes, not fact. So, as of that, let's find out the real truth.
Candace Owens had an hour-long interview with Piers Morgan, which was published just today. And the whole topic of conversation had to do with various conspiracy theories surrounding the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, this sit-down interview came about a day after Candace Owens met with Erica Kirk in private. We don't know and are not privy to the specific details of the discussion other than what Candace Owens has disclosed publicly. And she did get into a few details in the context of this Piers Morgan interview. But the real question is, after that meeting with Erica Kirk, was she persuaded that Tyler Robinson is in fact the individual who pulled the trigger and killed Charlie Kirk? Is she going to continue her sleuthing and her investigation? Is she doing this to make money? All of those themes and topics were explored in the context of this interview. Let's watch.
I said, I'm happy to keep my mouth shut. And I want to feel good walking out of here that there is something there. There is some sort of a smoking gun. And I will tell viewers just to be patient. And so they did call one of the lawyers working on this case, and it was not convincing at all. He said, in effect, all we have is what the public has seen. And we won't know more because we're investigating and looking for more. They don't have a video of him taking the shot, which I think was something that I assumed, like, okay, there's all these cameras. Maybe they actually have that video and they're waiting for a moment to release that to the public. They don't have that.
Do you believe, as a consequence of your 4.5 hours with Erica, do you believe that it is now most likely that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk?
Absolutely not. I haven't seen one piece of compelling evidence that Tyler Robinson scaled the rooftops like Spider-Man on a college campus that he didn't go to, and fired one shot, a magic bullet shot, and killed Charlie Kirk. I have not seen one piece of compelling evidence.
Candace Owens' strongest point, and the one that Piers Morgan never successfully dismantles, is brutally simple. There is not one piece of compelling evidence tying Tyler Robinson to the actual shooting. She isn't hedging. She isn't dancing around it. She says it clearly. No rooftop video, which is true. There's no footage of the shot, again, true. No proof he was even on campus. I didn't know that. No proof of the magic bullet trajectory, which is completely ridiculous because, again, this is a JFK. The authorities admit they have nothing beyond what the public already knows, which is, I feel, is kind of insane considering the scale of the crime. But this is where the official narrative collapses. The government, if they had it, they would show it. But they don't have a video. They don't have a clear ballistic match. And they don't have indisputable movement tracking. They have none of this, no proof of that. Instead, they're asking for the public to just trust them. And we all know in 2025, that trust for the government is completely gone.
In fact, I've seen more compelling evidence to the contrary.
So a lot has been made about the way Charlie Kirk was shot, at least as is described by the official narrative. I'm uncomfortable commenting on that because I'm not an expert. And based on the experts that I've heard talk about, the angle in which he was shot from, the weapon that was used, whether or not that type of round can hit Charlie Kirk's neck without an exit wound. There have been experts who have argued on both sides of this specific issue. So I feel uncomfortable commenting on that at this point. Okay. I'm not a weapons expert. I'm not a ballistics expert. However, there are some questions. Like, do you guys remember the first person that we all thought was the suspect? I forget the name of the guy, but the older gentleman who seems to be on the scene when all these traumatic things happen. He was the one saying that he did it. And then later, when he was pulled in for questioning, he told the police that he did it specifically to allow the perpetrator to get away. What was that? Like, why would he do that? Why would that guy literally put his life on the line, risk his life to claim that he committed an assassination he didn't commit? Like, I want more clarity on that. So she says, I met with Erica Kirk. I didn't see anything, any piece of evidence from them. And remember, they're meeting privately. And Candace Owens has said on her show, if anything was presented to me in that private meeting that would jeopardize the investigation and the case, I would not talk about it publicly. And I do think she really wants to find who killed Charlie Kirk. I do think that's what's motivating her. However, she claims they didn't share anything with me that was convincing. And in fact, she claims when I asked them, what do you have? They allegedly, this is what she's saying, we weren't in the meeting, but she alleges they have really no information outside of what the public already knows. Now, she could be lying, or they might be lying to her if they did in fact say that in the context of the meeting. We just don't know. But what I personally want is more clarity on what her theory is. Because I'm going to be honest with you, if at the time when I was watching her show to try to figure out like what is she actually saying, it was the most confusing thing in the world because there's so many different threads that she's pulling at and they don't seem to really be connected. There's the Egyptian planes allegedly following Erica Kirk around. Then there's this stuff about the DuPonts. Then there's this stuff about Pierre. And then there's another Pierre. And I just had a hard time following along and figuring out, okay, what is your theory here? So luckily she was asked about that. And she seems to think that Tyler Robinson is very likely involved. But she was asked whether or not, she thinks he's the only one involved, or if there's more to it than that. So she's going to kind of shed some light on what she's thinking in this next clip.
I think the communication should be, we are hopeful that throughout this investigation, we are going to uncover more evidence that links Tyler Robinson to this crime. I do feel confident that he was involved in some capacity on that day. As I have said many times on my show, I was the one who broke the story that he was at the Dairy Queen throwing out clothes, a local Dairy Queen, throwing out clothes in a nearby cemetery. And so I do think he was involved and multiple people were involved that day. And I think he did pick up clothes. I had communication with Lance's family. I had communication with Tyler Robinson's family. And for some reason, Lance is being protected, which I find to be very strange. His own family thinks he's guilty of more. And they find it weird that the feds kind of glossed over him, almost as though he was a Fed operative, like he was working on behalf of them.
Look, at the tail end of that, I think she makes a good point, right? How is it that Lance isn't considered a suspect? Is it just because of that text exchange? How do we not know whether or not Tyler Robinson engaged in that text exchange specifically to ensure that, Lance isn't seen as someone who conspired along with Tyler Robinson to carry out this assassination? I don't know. I just think and look, there could be a more thorough investigation happening behind the scenes that we're just not privy to. But there's really no mention of the alleged transgender lover of Tyler Robinson. No mention of what happened with this person. I mean, and that's supposed to be the person that motivated Tyler Robinson to assassinate Charlie Kirk due to his views on transgender issues. But again, we're not hearing anything about Lance anymore.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile is saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. tyt.com/switch, tyt.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
But, to be fair, Kash Patel is very busy appearing on podcasts to talk about how much he loves his girlfriend. Again, we do not have a suspect in custody in regard to the shooting that just happened at Brown University, which I think is crazy. I mean, people should be furious about that. There was someone in custody, but they released that individual and cleared whoever that was of wrongdoing. Anyway, let's keep going. So Candace Owens does not believe that anyone at Turning Point USA pulled the trigger and killed Charlie Kirk. And that's important to say because I do think that the way she's kind of talked about this story really has like a lot of innuendo that seems to imply that there are people within the Turning Point community who might have carried this out. Now, while she doesn't blame anyone or think anyone at Turning Point USA pulled the trigger, she is suspicious of something related to Turning Point USA. And she talks about that in this next clip.
Do you think anybody at Turning Point, did anybody at Turning Point, in your opinion, know that Charlie Kirk was going to be murdered?
There is specifically 2 people at Turning Point USA, and I have communicated that information to Erica and Justin Strife, that I would not be surprised if they had foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk being assassinated.
But do you have any evidence?
I'm not going to name. I am not going to name those people, okay? Because it's not right for me to name those people until I know for a fact that they did.
Did you give the names Did you give the names to Erica?
Yes,
so
I absolutely did.
You gave the names to Erica of 2 employees, current employees at Turning Point, who you believe were involved in the preparation for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Is that what you're saying?
I told them that if I were in your shoes, these would be 2 employees that I would look further into.
And what evidence do you have that they had any prior knowledge of the murder?
Because I don't have concrete evidence is the reason why I'm not naming them. So I've been responsible.
Got no evidence,
not saying,
but you're telling the widow that these 2 people may have been involved in the murder.
Wow, I have to tell you, this is a lot because this to me, she's taking a jump on this because she is either being both absolutely right or absolutely reckless. But that's how Candace Owens is. She is absolutely justified in saying institutions lie. Very true. Investigations get corrupted. Happens all the time, unfortunately. And cover-ups are not conspiracy. They're history. We've seen that in the past. But the problem is this. This is where she steps on a rake. She admits something devastating. She told Charlie Kirk's widow that 2 Turning Point USA employees may have had full knowledge of the murder and what could have occurred. But she does that with no evidence. That's not asking questions. That to me is, she's implying guilt, but she's doing that without receipts. And Piers Morgan, to his credit, nails her right here. He says if you do not have messages or recordings or documents or any kind of collaboration, you can't float names, not even in private, to a widow. That does something to either a man or a woman. That's where Candace loses moral high ground. Not because she is wrong to be suspicious. We all are a little bit. But because implicating without proof is dangerous, especially when lives and reputations are involved. She really should have thought 2 times on this one.
So I think the biggest issue with what Candace is doing, and I want to be clear, I don't have problems with people wanting to do their own investigation and look into things. I think our government is incompetent. There is distrust toward our institutions for good reason. So I am not at all saying that she has no right to ask questions. But I do think the problem with the way Candace Owens is carrying this out is it's fine to suspect that 2 individuals in particular might have had foreknowledge. But if I were in her shoes, what I would do is keep that close to my chest until I have something substantive to point to, a piece of evidence that actually justifies me incriminating the organization, because that is what she's doing. She might not be naming names, but at the same time, she is implying here that Turning Point USA is engaged in a cover-up of who actually assassinated Charlie Kirk. And you're entering dangerous territory there when you don't have the hard evidence to prove it. So again, you can have those suspicions, but I would just personally keep it close to my chest until I have some receipts. Now, I also don't blame her for being angry or suspicious of Turning Point USA because of the fact that the organization, immediately after Charlie Kirk's assassination, seemed to be dishonest about some things, namely Charlie Kirk's own political evolution as it pertains to US support for Israel. And they also were not upfront about what he was experiencing with the pro-Israel donors to Turning Point USA in the months leading up to his assassination. They seem to want to brush that under the rug entirely. And in fact, the biggest issue I had with Erica Kirk's handling of the interview with Barry Weiss is that she totally simplified Charlie Kirk's identity and his views on Israel, because his views on Israel were a lot more nuanced than he loved Israel. You know what I'm saying? He was having some issues with the fact that we were getting dragged into war with Iran, for instance. He was having issues with, some of the way that Israel was carrying out he certainly saw it as a war in Gaza. I mean, he was certainly more supportive of Israel than I am. That's very clear. But to say that he was just, blanket, I love Israel, they're doing nothing wrong, that's just not true. So when you know Charlie Kirk as closely as Candace did, and you know that Charlie Kirk was having these issues with Israel and the Israel lobby, and you see Turning Point USA kind of like cover that up, yeah, you're going to be suspicious of them. And I don't begrudge her for feeling that way. But outside of that, if you don't have evidence, hard evidence, that individuals within Turning Point USA engaged in a cover up, maybe don't mention that until you have the hard evidence. Just even implying that that might be the case, I think is dangerous and puts a target on people's backs. So the final video I'll go to is her comments on Israel, because she was asked if she believes that Israel was involved.
Israel, I got tons of questions about. Yeah, I think Israel is a very good place to start when Bibi Netanyahu is just denying and just way too involved in the beginning. That was weird. Everyone felt it was weird, and they were right to feel that it was weird. And when Bibi admits that he called him 2 weeks before and invited him to Israel, like, what's that about? People are being... And also because it just happens to be that from the very beginning, Zionists don't want us investigating the Charlie Kirk assassination. So it's just, I would say, the usual suspect.
Okay, so here's the part everyone pretends not to understand. Candace here is not saying Israel did it. She's saying Israel's behavior after the assassination was abnormal. And she's right. Netanyahu commented immediately, blaming radicals before a suspect existed. Zionist groups discouraging investigation. That doesn't prove guilt, but it does raise legitimate questions. And when people scream anti-Semitism instead of answering these questions, it only makes things worse. Netanyahu has a history of exploiting tragedy, publicizing violence, inserting himself where he truly doesn't belong. So people noticing that pattern is not insane. It's actually rational.
I mean, what she said at the tail end of that clip is absolutely true. Don't you guys find it weird that the ardent defenders of Israel in this country tend to want to avoid the release of the Epstein files? Like, I literally found myself in a 2v1 debate with that Josh Hammer guy and Alan Dershowitz, in which both of them very clearly do not want to shed light on the Epstein files. Now, Alan Dershowitz pretends like he wants them released, but specifically because he wants to smear the very women who accused Jeffrey Epstein of exploiting them and abusing them. But yeah, I mean, I think the behavior that you see from the Israeli government immediately after some tragic event takes place here in the United States makes them seem suspicious. I mean, you can't deny that. Okay, when And look, it could just be Benjamin Netanyahu being the depraved goon that he is, using tragedy for his own political purposes. Because the first thing he did was go on a media tour in which he started blaming radical Islamists and leftists for the assassination of Charlie Kirk before we even had a suspect in custody. So again, it might just be a depraved, disgusting, genocidal foreign leader using these traumatic events, these horrible, tragic events for his own political benefit. But don't get upset when people start looking at Israel and like, was it Israel involved? Why is their government getting so involved in commenting on this? It's crazy. So again, I don't begrudge her for wanting more information. I want more information, but I do think there's a way to do this where you're keeping in mind that engaging in a witch hunt or pointing fingers or implying that people have engaged in wrongdoing when you don't have any evidence of that, that's a dangerous thing to do. So I hope she's a little more careful moving forward. It seems like she's not going to drop the issue, even though a lot of her fans were raging against her yesterday because they thought that Erica Kirk maybe talked to her and convinced her not to look into this. But her audience wants her to look into this. And, I think she is going to continue looking into this. The question is she going to change the way she does it? And we're just going to have to wait and see.
Okay, so let's sum up this clip. Candace Owens wins only on skepticism. She demolished the idea that the public has not really seen any real evidence. Piers Morgan does win on restraint. He's right that accusations without proof does cross a line. The official narrative loses badly, though, because after hours of discussion, we still don't have a few things. We still don't have a clear shooter, a clear motive, a clear timeline, or a clear explanation. And until that changes, no evidence is a fair damning critique. But Candace is right to keep digging. She is right to distrust institutions. She is right to say the story doesn't add up, because technically, it doesn't look like it does. But if she wants to stay credible, she has to tighten her standards, not loosen them. Because once you start implying guilt without proof, you become the thing you've criticized. And the truth deserves better than that. And you know what? I think she knows that. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll talk with you the next time we need to uncover the real truth.